I have an idea for a reboot of the Colbert Report. I think right now is the perfect time. Obviously, they just announced a couple days ago that Stephen Colbert's Late Show is not going to be continued beyond next year. We've seen Jon Stewart return to the Daily Show, even though it's only once a week. It's still been really great to see that. And Colbert, I always thought Colbert Report was such a good show. So here's my pitch for the Colbert Report reboot, or as I think they should call it, the Colbert Report Part Deux. So the intro will stay kind of the same as it used to be, or they can reshoot it obviously with updated cameras and all that crap. And we see, instead of him waving the flag at the beginning like he used to, we see him holding a framed picture of himself at the desk from the Late Show, and he rips the frame in half, and from out of the frame he pulls a copy of the Constitution, kind of like a National Treasure style reference. From there, we go into his introduction, and he explains how he's leaving the left, and he name drops other leaving the left pioneers. Maybe he throws out like a Dave Rubin or a Tim Pool or somebody who's been famous for doing that online. Give something to the online crowd, and just kind of going through how when he left the Colbert Report originally, it was the end of the 8 years of Obama, and it looked like it was going to be 4 to 8 years of Hillary, and that he thought he'd go undercover as a lib at that point and go do that for a little while, and then quickly Big Daddy Trump, as he's going to call him the whole show, Big Daddy Trump. Big Daddy Trump was so charismatic and so awesome that he made a couple references to getting sick of winning, but he beat Hillary despite the fact that Colbert was convinced that he was going to that Obama and Hillary were going to rig the election. So he can make some references to that, and ultimately he explains how Big Daddy Trump won, and then he was stuck in this contract and he couldn't get out, and then finally when Big Daddy Trump came back into office this term, he made it so that Colbert's lib cuck persona was too toxic even for the world, so that they had to fire him and finally got him out of that contract. Then he leads into The Word, which that was one of his famous segments. One of my favorite segments of his was The Word, and we see the word is profit motive, and he starts explaining how following the money is capitalist and the most American thing you can do. So when he got offered the bigger paycheck to go to CBS, it was obviously the conservative ideal to do that, to go follow the big paycheck, and he was getting to be undercover, and like he can keep playing with that. And then after he wraps it back up by saying, like, now I'm following the money back here, and so obviously this is the right place to be because this is where the money is. Kind of a that one of those nods of his hat, tip of his hat, that he kind of did to the fact that it was a joke, even though he never broke character. He would do that, so like that's kind of showing like, oh yeah, I'm leaving the left to get money the way that most people who claim to leave the left do. It's a grift to get money, and that's what he's giving that game away a little bit without breaking character. From there, we see he does a couple of news articles or whatever is present in the day that by the time that he leaves CBS and goes back to Comedy Central, and then we see the interview, because he always would have a guest on every episode. My suggestion, as of right now, I mean, things can change, but I think the perfect guest as of right now is Zohran Mamdani. So he says tonight's guest is New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani. Mamdani, is sitting there. He does his usual, like, yeah, look at me, kind of Colbert stealing the scene thing. And Mamdani is a great option, I think, because he is quick-witted. He's great in interviews, and it's kind of the exact thing that Colbert plays back and forth with so much. Colbert is the insulting foil to his guest, and so he throws a couple of questions like, in the mayoral race, you were one of the few candidates who did not have credible sexual misconduct allegations against you. How are we supposed to trust you as a mayor if you aren't credible? Play with that. That's the kind of thing I think Colbert does great with. Second question I think that he goes for is so incendiary, but it's also like it's perfect, for tee up for Mamdani to kind of take over. Is, what do you hate more, New York or America? And we go back and forth for whatever that period of time is. I think it's usually like 6-7 minutes for that interview. We wrap up the interview. He says his good nights. The lights go down. Maybe we infer that the audience has left, and he breaks character. He looks like exhausted, like he can't do the character. His phone rings. FaceTime makes it better, I think, for this joke. Phone rings. It's Jon Stewart. And Jon Stewart says, "We're putting together a team." And then we see John Oliver, Jordan Klepper, Hassan Minhaj, whoever else we want to, from like the hosts, Samantha Bee, any other hosts that kind of became famous from The Daily Show. And then finally we see Trevor Noah. And Colbert snaps back into character and says, "The new kid? Really, John?" And then Trevor gets defensive and says, "New kid, I hosted for 7 years," and they start bickering as we fade to black.